We are back, the fellas, right here, and we're brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Hours of energy now, no crash later, and as much caffeine as a cup of the leading premium coffee. See 5hourenergy.com for more information. All right, Link. Our next guest, very interesting woman. In fact, she was the only female general manager. She was general manager and vice president for a sports team. It's the history of sports.
Right.
And her name is Susan Spencer, and we welcome her to the program.
Absolutely.
Hello, Susan. How are you?
Hey, Anthony, how are you? I think we met way back when, but I won't. Don't mention my age. I won't mention yours.
Yeah, you know what? I was right before your dad, Leonard Toews, passed. I was I was visiting him a lot. A very nice man, a very eccentric fellow, very interesting people, and what a wonderful family, Susan.
Well, I'm very proud of his legacy. I really am. I just hope that I can be 1/100th of what he was in terms of the way he gave to others. It's really incredible. It's a great person to follow in their footsteps, but a hard act to follow.
Oh yeah, he was a bigger than life. Like Leonard was a bigger than life guy. He was like the ultimate sportsman, bon vivant kind of guy.
Wow.
Yeah,
he was, and it was really a culture shock for him to end up with a woman in his organization who had a completely different perspective, and I think he pulled his hair out on that one.
Now you were an attorney, the whole thing. You were the vice president of the Eagles franchise back then and general manager, and you presided over a very tumultuous time in the NFL when the 1983 labor strike happened, the whole lockout and everything else. What can you compare and contrast a little bit from back then to today?
Well, what I think, you mean in terms of the potential lockout, or in terms of how the environment was different?
The environment behind the labor disagreement.
Well, because I was the lawyer for the team, for the Eagles, I was involved in almost every one of the meetings that dealt with the labor negotiations. It was very, very acrimonious. It was a tremendous amount of tension. And what surprised me was that the attorney that the NFL selected, and I can't remember his name, but if somebody mentions it, I probably would remember it, a real tough guy, tough guy that had done a lot of very difficult and large profile antitrust and union issues and contract negotiations like this one. And he had a real swagger and a real kind of angry, outgoing demeanor, even to the NFL owners. I mean, he just seemed to be really hardcore. And I said, boy, I don't think that's the right tone. If you want to negotiate with people, the last thing you need to do is throw an A-bomb in the room. I just don't think it's the right way to go. It wouldn't be my style as a lawyer to do that. I would try to have somebody that had a very, not placid demeanor, but one that was relatively calm. And he was not calm at all. He was a high wire, absolutely. I said, we'll never settle this. This thing is going to go on forever with that personality. It did get settled, and I think we were out either 4 or 5 games. I think is my recollection that we played with, in parentheses and quotes, replacement players.
Yes.
For 4 of the stinkiest games I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
But I don't know what they're planning this time. But I've heard a lot of conversation that this is going to go, and I know what the issues are. The issues in our day were not the players at that point in time were not looking for a piece of the TV action. They wanted it, but they thought that was never doable. They just wanted to have more benefits, a greater control, and also a greater ability to be after football, to have a larger pension, to have the kinds of things that seemed to make a lot of sense to me. And I kind of was talking to myself because no one wanted to hear my opinions because I was much more balanced. And I thought, the players are the game, and I believe that they should have a bigger share of it. But none of the owners
interesting. No
felt
one wanted
way.
to listen to that, right? Because you were actually because you realize that the world is gray, and to really kind of reach an agreement, you have to go where not just one party wins, but everybody wins. You had that novel approach.
Well, and when you settle something, whether it's a lawsuit or whether you settle this kind of thing, everybody walks away and thinks the other side got the better end of the bargain. Always. They go, oh, I could have gotten more. Oh, I could have done better. Oh, I really settled. But that's what a good settlement is, when both sides think the other side did better. And I was not involved in the day-to-day negotiations, actually, with the Players Association, the Players Union. I was not. But I was involved in the strategy sessions on our side. And every time I would volunteer information, the other owners would turn around and look at me and go, what is her problem? What do you mean they deserve this? What do you mean we should be more moderate? What do you mean we should try to compromise this? Because my philosophy, knowing the harm that was coming to the teams when the strike happened, I mean, everything in terms of the office was just in shambles. You either made the decision to keep all your employees on board, and yet you didn't need them because it was very quiet. There was nothing really going on. So you could either furlough them for a while or you could keep them. I don't have to tell you what my dad's decision was, keep them all. So we had a huge payroll that we couldn't pay. We didn't have cash flow coming in from the TV revenue to pay anything. And it was really, really difficult. I think that year that the franchise lost a couple $1 million.
Now, Susan, you have a terrific book out, and you're an author. And I'm just curious because you talk about, what it takes to succeed in a male-dominated workplace. And we were just having this discussion off there. Do you think that there will be a female general manager where it's X and O and on the field type of thing? Will we see that within the next 5 years?
I don't, and I hate to use the word never, but I'd like to say unless there's an owner that's a woman and she puts herself in as GM, as Georgia Frontiere sort of did when she owned the Rams. I don't think so, and I think that the reason is that unless what was unique that no one really knew about me was I loved football. I loved the game. When I was 5 years old, my dad used to invite his guests, and they were very good friends of his, Frank Leahy, Terry Brennan, and Wally Butts. Now, is that a triumvirate or what?
That's very incredible.
Nice. Absolutely.
I mean, and I was 5 years old, so sure. I would sit there, and they would have this little magnetic board, and they'd be in our little library because they would stay for the weekend to get away from all of the, all the excitement. They could just kind of hide somewhere, and they hid at our house. And they used to let me watch them, and I'd ask them questions, and I'd say, what's that, and what's that, and why are you doing that? I must have been a real pain in the neck. But they showed me, and obviously I don't remember exactly what they showed me, but it made a big impression on me. And it allowed me from the very beginning to love the sport of football. And I think most women don't love it. They may like it, they may watch it, they may get some involvement, but if you don't know it and you're not passionate about it, I don't think you can be a good general manager of a team. I just don't think so.
Well, Susan, let me ask you this, because I've had the pleasure of working with a young lady by the name of Amy Trask over, it was a pretty high exec over with the Raiders, and many people began to speculate that as Al Davis's time draws to a close, that she might be an heir apparent in line to take over the Raiders. Now, I'm curious to open up the pages of your book because I want to know how a woman can succeed in a male-dominated society, especially being around as many men in that facility that just were, women-phobic. I mean, I could not see them actually giving her the time or the necessary attention to be their superior in something like as football.
Well, what's interesting is I assumed that the coaches were going to be really biased and not want me to ever talk to them. Did
Right.
They just say, get out of here, get out of my face? And my office was right next door to Dick Vermeil's. And all the coaches in those days at the vet, the administrative office was on one floor, and all the coaches were along one side, and I had this little tiny office that they kind of stuck the lawyer in the beginning, and that was fine. It was great with me because I was where all the action was. Eventually, I moved on the other side and had a bigger office when I became the, quote, acting general manager. But I think the biggest bias is certainly not the players and certainly not the coaches, but it's ownership. It's the ownership that has the problem of worrying what the fans are going to think about if there's a woman in that seat. And Al Davis is certainly one of a kind, like my dad is and was. And so Al would probably, he's very unconventional, so he would do whatever he thinks is best for the team, and he would have no compunctions to do that. But I don't think, knowing the other owners as I did, that they would ever put their daughter in that situation.
That's a great point, Susan. Really enjoy talking to you. Very interesting stuff. And once again, the book, where can we find it? And the title again is?
It's called Briefcase Essentials. There are several chapters on the Eagles in the book. One of them is the ultimate story, the locker room, of course. And that was a place I never wanted to go. I wasn't interested. I didn't want to put myself in, quote, harm's way. But I ended up doing it by accident, not realizing it was off season, thinking there would be anybody in the men's locker room, in the football locker room. And Otho Davis, who I'm sure you know or know of, was one of my dearest friends at the Eagles, who was the athletic trainer. And I had given him a budget allowance for certain equipment. And when that equipment was available, he was all excited. So he called me and he said, "Susan, you got it. This equipment is dynamite. You got to come down here." I said, "Where's here?" He said, "I'm in the basement." I said, "Well, where are you?" He said, "I'm behind the players' locker room." I went, "Well, I don't even know where that is." So he said, "All right, well, come down." And it was maybe it was February or March. So I knew that nobody was. I mean, it was dead in the offices. Players were not generally around. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you would look at it, some people would say that was the best thing in the whole world. I ended up in the locker room with 5 football players who had just come out of the shower.
Nice.
So you have to
That's
buy the book
classic.
to figure out what I did. But I
like
can tell you, it was a moment of truth for this girl.
Oh, that's awesome. Susan Spencer, thank you so much. What a pleasure to talk to you.
Same here, and I hope our paths will cross sometime
Without
in the
a
future.
doubt. That'd be beautiful.
Thanks, Susan.
Spencer,
Be well.
a fantastic woman, and she's very, very sharp.